Well, welcome all. Welcome to those in Zoom. How many have we got on Zoom tonight, Luke? 13. Well, very good. Lucky 13. I think I'll hand over to Mark, VK3 OHM, who's going to present on the best loitering defence system that never was. I think it was loosely titled as the Nulka defence system. So, Mark, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Just a bit of a trigger warning before we get started. I'm going to be using the word weapon a bit tonight. I want to stress that we're talking about the good type of weapon, the defensive weapon. It's not one of those nasty ones designed to kill or hurt people. So I've never had any moral or ethical dilemmas working in this industry. These things save lives. Also, I will be briefly mentioning a couple of wartime actions, but only to put things into context. None of you served in the Falklands or anywhere like that? Good. Up until I retired about nearly 10 years ago now, I was the chief engineer for the weapons systems business of BAE Systems, based in Richmond, down where the IKEA building is. I had quite a number of products that I was responsible for. There's the Nulka anti-ship missile decoy, which we're going to talk about tonight. Also the evolved Sea Sparrow missile, the advanced short-range air-to-air missile, the ship air defence model. We had a couple of unmanned aerial vehicles and an unmanned ground vehicle. Just a few pictures. Top left there is an ESSM. That's an anti-missile missile. It's a missile designed to shoot down another missile. Below that is an unmanned ground vehicle. Its role was to be a mule and just follow people around carrying their stuff. Down the bottom was one of many unmanned aerial vehicles that we designed and built. Top right is the ASRAM, which is an air-to-air missile. That was fully supported, designed here in Australia. And the bottom right is the ship air defence model, which is a gigantic synthetic environment. It's a giant war game. And you plug real equipment into it and you use it to develop tactics. But we're here tonight just to talk about one thing, that's Nulka. And I'm going to try and compress 40 to 50 years of history into a short period of time. The first ship to be sunk by a missile in wartime was the Israeli Eilat, sinking in 1966-67 during the Israeli-Egypt war with a Styx missile. And people went, oh, that's unfortunate. What can we do? There was no defence against that type of missile attack. Yeah. Yeah. That's all it takes one. They're sea skimming. They come in very, very, very low. They hit you right at the vulnerable point and they make a very big hole. Sometimes in both sides of the ship. Well, they're travelling, they've got very significant kinetic energy. They're travelling at Mach 2 or 3 and they weigh a couple of 100 kilos sometimes. It's a lot of energy. So, a short time after this, the chief scientist of DSTO was heard to remark, it's impossible to make a rocket hover. And of course, his scientists set about proving the old guy wrong, and they invented this thing called hover rock. In it proved that you could make a solid fuel rocket hover. Solid fuel rockets are difficult to control because you can't turn them off. Once you light it, that's it. They're going full bore. And of course DSTO immediately lost interest because, well, we've solved that problem. What's next? A little bit later, as a result of the Sheffield incident, which I'll deal with on the next slide, the technology was passed to industry, that is BAE Systems, to turn this very rough proof of concept prototype thing into an actual commercial product. And the final thing looks nothing like the prototype. It was a joint development between Sipican, which is an American company, they did the electronics payload, and BAE Systems, who did everything else. As the Americans were paying for this, we had to have some American content. So we had a small amount. So how do you make a rocket hover? It's tricky. It's got solid, it's a solid fuel rocket, so you can't turn it off. What they've got is 3 tabs at 120 degrees, which sit in the efflux of the rocket motor. If you pull them in and out equally, you can control the thrust. So you can make it go up and down. If you push them all in, there's not much thrust and it will drop. Pull them all out, more thrust, it'll go up. It's the control problem of doing this, of balancing a pencil on the end of your finger. It's very, very difficult just to make it stay there, but it's a bit more complicated than that. If you put the tabs in and out differentially, you can make the thing lean. And if you make it lean, it'll move. So you can lean it over, it will move, and then you've got to lean it back to stop it moving, or it'll just keep moving. And you can control which direction it moves. So there's a lot of very tight control loops going on inside. Some very smart cookies went to the design of the algorithms. Nulka uses exactly the same trick. 3 tabs to make it move up, down, left, right, forward and back. And this was in 1988. Long time ago. Yeah.
We've got the solid fuel going on, we've got the thrust
Yeah.
extending to the bottom. You can't control the thrust.
No?
What do the tabs do? Do they just direct the
They just disrupt it. It just makes it very messy and all goes everywhere, and it's a bit. The leaning process is you put 2 tabs in and 1 tab out, and so the efflux comes out crooked, and so it'll lean over. But we're talking millimetres, sub-millimetres here. You don't want to lean too much. After that first incident with the Styx missile, missiles got a lot better. And in 1982, in the Falklands War, the HMS Sheffield was hit, sunk by an Exocet. And that really got the world's attention. 2 other ships were also hit. The Argentinians had 5 missiles and they used them all. And they all hit something. And 3 of them resulted in a sunk ship. So the reaction around the world was, holy crap, we don't have a defence against these things. So fortunately DSTO had done that original work on Hoverock and said, we can make a hovering rocket which can act as a decoy. There were all sorts of other fairly bizarre and weird and wonderful solutions dreamed up at the time, but none of them's really come to fruition. Nulka's the only one that's actually become a real product. And it works. We know it works. It's been tested quite a few times. So how did Nulka come about? The Americans were graciously granted exclusive access to Pine Gap in Central Australia in 1970. The balance of trade in weapons between the US and us was grossly in their favour, like 100% imports and 0% exports. So as a quid pro quo, the Australians wanted to lead a substantial defence project. The Defence Minister, Kim Beazley, suggested Project Winnan, as it was called at the time. It later became Nulka. I was lucky enough to catch up with Mr Beazley at a DSTO dinner and tell him that, well, it was a very good decision you made there, because it worked out really well. So Nulka was well funded as a way to shut up the whinging Australians. And there was quite a lot of resource. It was very, very well funded, lots of resources, because they needed it desperately. They have lots of very big ships in the US, which we call targets. So, the Nulka anti-ship missile decoy. There's a picture of one there being fired. The decoy itself is a cylindrical tube about 2 metres long, about 250mm diameter, and you fire it off the ship and it will hover. So it's launched from the ship. The decoy seduces the incoming missile. The incoming missiles are sending out radar, and they're getting a radar cross-section return from the ship. The decoy just adjusts that returns very slightly to make the missile think there's nothing to see here, the ship's over here, trust me. So it just wanders away from the ship very slowly. You can't move quickly because missiles are smart and they'll know, oh, that's a decoy. So you have to wander away at ship speed, slowly over there, saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. It's fitted to most Australian, US and Canadian navies and the US Coast Guard. The US Navy is the largest navy in the world. Do you know what the second largest navy is? The US Coast Guard. Yeah, and then China. I'm not sure exactly how many ships it's fitted to these days, but they've manufactured 1,500 rounds, so quite a few. And they even use it to protect the Nimitz aircraft carriers. And you can understand the value of a decoy, because there's 5,000 people on a Nimitz class. You don't want to lose 5,000 people. It's Australia's largest military export, and none of you have ever heard of it. It's $100 million a year every year, and it's been doing that for the last 20 years. I just keep churning them out. So the anatomy of the round, from the top, up the top is the spin control unit. You've got this thing floating in space and you want to turn it because you want to point the payload toward the incoming. How do you turn in free space? You can't, you've got nothing to push against. So it uses a reaction wheel, spin control unit, which is the same technique a lot of satellites use. So it can use the spin control unit to point the payload towards the threat. The cross at the top, there's some vanes which give it a little bit of air resistance, not much. No, it's just you've got a spinning wheel. You can just exert force against the direction of spin if you want to go that way, or with the direction of spin if you want to go that way. The white bit is the electronic warfare payload. It's essentially a video repeater, but it takes the incoming missile's radar and manipulates it slightly to make the image appear where it isn't. There's a bit of a tweak going on. So it manipulates the radar return. There's an air pressure data sensor. There are 16 holes around the outside. You can use the average of the 16 to measure your barometric height. You can't use GPS or inertial navigation or anything like that. And you can measure the difference in the pressure at the various holes to detect the wind. Because, I don't know, who's been out in the ocean? It's always bloody windy out there and rough. So, you know, it's got to work in a 40-knot storm. So it can measure height. Yeah? Oh yeah, it's tricky stuff. There's a flight control computer. And the bottom half is the solid fuel rocket motor. And then right at the bottom, deflector tabs, which you use to control the height and the tilt. Now, you're going to see an animation of it in action. You'll see two separate missile engagements. It all happens pretty fast, so I need to explain what you're seeing before you see it. Otherwise, blink and you'll miss it. So some radar-guided anti-ship missiles are fired at a ship. The ship will first try and shoot them down. It's got missiles and it can shoot and hit the other missile. It's very tricky to hit a missile with a missile. It's like hitting a bullet with a bullet. Very, very difficult. Nevertheless, it may shoot some of them down, but it probably won't get all of them. The ship will then launch the decoy and try and seduce the remaining missiles away from the ship. Now, you'll see in the video a green holographic looking ship. It's not a real ship. That's what the missile sees. The missile thinks that's where the ship is, and it will lock onto it. The missile just moves away slowly, hopefully dragging the missile with it as it moves. A missile, they're pretty smart. They may realise it's been fooled, but it's usually too late. You can't do a U-turn at Mach 2, not without turning into a banana. It's called a brown pants weapon. Because you stand on the stern or the bow and you watch it and you just see it go and go, oh, holy crap, that was close. Because it doesn't miss you by much. It doesn't destroy the missile, it just makes it miss. We know it works. It's been field tested, particularly recently around Yemen. There's been lots of missiles shot at ships around Yemen recently. All right, so I've got a warning, audio. I've got an animation. Here we go.
Warning red, answer warning red. Bogies inbound 030, 100 miles. Weapons tight to close loose. Defy Foxtrot, Bruises inbound 230, 80, size 4, weapons free.
BDMS to auto, Nulka to auto.
Birds confirmed. Vector 23242526. Tracks 2325, heads up 2426.
AS-17 Seeker 230, multiple detections.
Cruisers 2426 seduced Grand Slam. Bulldogs inbound, 12515, side 3, Ray Delta.
Nulka bearing 125, engage. Nulka away.
Bulldogs seduced, Grand Slam, Ray Delta.
So that's the launcher. There's a whole variety of different types of launchers. Most ships carry between 10 and 20 decoys. Some ships can carry up to 60. Every ship's got a different type of launcher system. There's a fire control system which works out all that trickery of, well, where's the threat coming from and what's my strategy here? There's no point in me decoying the missile if all I do is I point it into another ship. So it's got to know, well, where are we going to take the missile? Away somewhere harmless. You've literally got less than a second to react. So the whole system's automatic. The human's not fast enough. They hesitate. Oh, should I? Will I get in trouble if I fire this? Because it's $500,000 I'm going to throw over the side. So it's all automatic. So there's automatic engagement of the threat. Humans are too slow. It has to be sailor-proof. God, that is a very difficult requirement to meet. To make something sailor-proof is an absolute nightmare. To be fair, they are often wearing an NBC suit. So they've got big gloves on and face masks and all that sort of carry on. So big keys on the keyboard. But, you have to be able to drop it on the ground. And we did try and make it as simple as possible, so not a lot of training required. A few interesting facts. Nulka is fitted to 150 plus Australian Navy, US Navy, US Coast Guard and Canadian Navy ships. It's Australia's largest military export, and to date, well, last time I checked, 1,500 rounds. It's probably more than that now. The Americans have a rule that any weapon installed on an American ship must be made in America. So they've got Bofors guns on American ships, so Bofors had to build a factory in America to make them before they would allow them on the ship. No, they want guaranteed support, lifetime support for these things. Nulka is the only exception. They are not manufactured in America. A part of it is, the payload is. But the whole thing's put together, assembled and tested and whatever here. It's that good, they are willing to make that exception. Nulka is an indigenous word meaning be quick. And it's very quick because it's deployed automatically. Humans are too slow. If you really want the full picture of Nulka, there's a free 210-page book on the subject. It's a very tough read, and I was there and it was a tough read. So it's 40 to 50 years of history in excruciating detail. It's called Nulka, A Compelling Story. That's a picture of the front of the book. Now, I think I've got one extra slide. Oh yeah, well, Nulka did hovering rockets way before Elon did. He's only just started to do them in the last year or two. We've been doing this for years. So he's not that clever. Now, this is the final slide. Australia's got a very rich heritage. We punch way above our weight in this area of weapons. Some of you will recognise some of those names up there. I mean, there's Nulka, Tirana, Jindavik, Ikara, Hover Rock's in there, Winnan, High Fire, that's our version of scramjets, hypersonic missiles. We started down in the red bit there, we did some autonomous UAVs which turned into Hurty, which has become Ghost Bat. You know, the drone, the companion aircraft for the RAAF? It's called Ghost Bat. That's got all the BAE, that's where all the BAE technology, autonomous stuff ended up. So although it's a Boeing aircraft, it's more BAE than Boeing. Australia is pretty competent in this area. So it's one of those rare examples of an international collaboration over many years where there was significant trust on both sides. It was basically a handshake agreement. Beazley shook hands with Caspar Weinberg and said, "We will work with you to make a Nulka. You give us lots of money and we'll do it." And we did. Doesn't happen very often that way. It's done wonders for our credibility. We've earned lots of kudos out of it. It's contributed billions of dollars to our economy and kept many engineers involved in noble work, and you're looking at one of them. Kept me busy for 10 years. All right, thank you.
All right, Mark, thank you very much for a very enlightening talk this evening. I think everyone greatly appreciated it. No doubt for our friends on Zoom, best buck is in the rooms here, but if you can't get here, we'll keep working on improving our audio. Apologies if it was difficult to hear. But again, thank you, Mark, most enlightening. And do keep in mind that Mark will be coming back again in the new year for another presentation. So look forward to that as well.
Not on this stuff.
No, something else. Something else.
Something else.
All right. So thank you, Mark. Well done.
All right. Yeah.
So that concludes the evening. Please feel free to have a biscuit, a cup of tea, or hang around for a natter. Thank you.